I think we'll start with some introductions in a minute. But I just want to say a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us either live this afternoon or perhaps engaging with us via a recording. And it is a briefing for ECTs who are starting induction in September, and also maybe new to mentoring an ECT. And the whole point of us having today's session is to explain to you what induction is all about. Essentially, it's not mentor training per se, in terms of training on the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of being a mentor and developing your ability as a mentor, but it is designed to give you that information about what induction actually entails, so you can best support your ECTs through that process. As we go through today's session, please feel free to use the chat. As we go through. It is me manning the chat, so just bear with me. But I do have my colleague Sylvia, who has actually just joined, and Sylvia is one of our fantastic delivery partners. So Sylvia, I know you've just joined. If you do see any questions that drop into the chat that you're able to answer, that'd be really helpful. But I will stop momentarily just to keep an eye on the chat and make sure I answer any questions. So the first thing I would like to do is share with you some names and do some introductions. So the appropriate body team is made up of 4 people in the central team, but we also have some really key people in the external team, the delivery partners, who I'll talk about in just a minute. And so just to let you know that the person on the left-hand side, that's Mark. He's our senior director across the 3 hubs. So I work at the appropriate body service, but we actually are based at 3 teaching school hubs. A teaching school hub is an organisation that's designated by the Department for Education to provide teacher development services to schools in a specific region. And we work across 3 regions, which is why I've got some people joining in Croydon, why I've got some people joining us in Shoebury-Ness and over at King John School in Essex, and then why I've got some people as well joining from Redbridge as well, because we have 3 teacher school hubs, and Mark is a senior director across those 3 hubs. He's also our named person for the AB services, and I report to Mark, and he's also the named contact for the appropriate body. So I will talk about that towards the end of the presentation. But if you ever had any queries, any concerns about your induction as an ECT, you can always contact us as an appropriate body. I mainly deal with those queries, but Mark is also a named person that you can contact and reach out to with regards to that. I don't know, Sylvia, if you're able to, and don't worry if you're not, because I'm putting you on the spot, to drop Mark's email address into the chat for me, Sylvia. That would be really, really helpful if you can. If Sylvia can't, I'll do it at the end. Then we've also got myself. So I am in charge of the strategic development of AB, and also I work with our delivery partners, and I lead the quality assurance side of the appropriate body. And I'll talk to you about what does the appropriate body do in just a minute, like how does the appropriate body relate to an ECT, what's their role essentially. But we also help if ECTs are struggling, finding things difficult, maybe they're not quite on track to meet the teacher standards. We make sure that schools are giving them the support that they are entitled to. And then we've got some wonderful people in the AB team, Mel and Sophie. Sylvia, big thumbs up. If anyone wants to take a note of Mark's email address, you can see it there in the chat. And I'm also going to drop my email address in the chat as well. And you can get in contact with us if, after having tried to resolve any issues within your school and you've talked to the appropriate people, who I'll talk about who they are in just a minute. If you've exhausted that and there's still some issues that you need help with, you can always get in contact with myself or Mark. And then I've got some wonderful administrators and the coordinator there as well. But as an ECT, you probably come in contact with us more often in terms of you having any concerns. We've also got our wonderful delivery partners. So we are delighted to be working with Catalyst Academies Trust, who look after our AB services within Thurrock and Malden, and also for the Briscoe schools. So if you are at a school within there, Andrea is probably going to be your day-to-day contact, actually. So if you ever have any queries on things like that, she's the one mainly working with your schools. We also have Sylvia, who supports us in Waltham Forest, and she's got many years of experience working with the Teacher Regulation Agency, with ECTs in Waltham Forest, and she's continuing to work with schools in that area. And then we've also got Chris, and he's got a team as well at Seven Kings, who are going to be supporting schools in the Redbridge area. So if you fall into one of those three categories, you might receive comms from them on a time-to-time basis. But just to let you know, they're also working in those regions. You might not fall into those regions. You might be in South London. Delivery partners, we don't have any in South London. You might be working in other areas of Essex, in which case Andrea isn't supporting you because you don't not from Thurrock in that region. But just in case you are, I thought I'd let you know who the delivery partners are. So this is what we'll talk about today. I will give you just a minute to look at today's agenda. So as we go through, if any questions pop to your head, then please do feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll leave time at the end for any questions as well. So I think before we go on to the early career teacher entitlement, a quick note on the role of the appropriate body. So the old name, and some of the mentors might be familiar with this, was the awarding body, which maybe makes a bit more sense. We're the one who awards the fact that they've completed induction. Sometimes the name appropriate body can be confusing, but the way that I interpret it is that we make sure that everything in your induction as ECTs is appropriate for you, that everything is being done in line with the statutory guidance. And we've got two main key areas for responsibility. So number one is we're monitoring your support as an ECT. We're making sure that all the support that you're entitled to, you will receive. And I'll talk to you about that in just a minute. What support am I entitled to? And the second thing is we're monitoring your assessment. We are the one who ultimately will make the recommendation to the DFE now to say whether or not you have met the teacher standards. And that is based on your head teacher's recommendation, which is based on the evidence that the school submits to us as the appropriate body. So those are the two things that we do. We monitor the support that is in place for you, and we monitor the assessment that's there. So we do have that quality assurance role, essentially, of induction. Hence why I've said, if things aren't going and aren't being done as they should be, you can always reach out to us if, after having raised it with the school, it's not going to be there. You're not probably going to have to do that, but I just want to let you know, if the worst came to the worst, we are here to support you. We are an impartial body. So we're not on the side of the ECT. We're not on the side of the head teacher or the induction tutor. We are impartial. We're here to support all stakeholders to make sure that the guidance from induction is appropriately adhered to and it's followed. So the early career teacher entitlement, this is a bit of a new phrase that actually is starting from September 2025. And the reason being is people used to talk about induction and then they talk about the early career training and they talk about it separately, whereas actually it comes under this umbrella term, the early career teacher entitlement. And it's there essentially to support that transition from ITT over to ECT, to create a really strong foundation for you to then go on and form a career of teaching that's going to last many years, and you're going to go on to from success to success to success. But it's recognizing that these first 2 years of your career are super, super important. And just because you're qualified and you've demonstrated excellent progress against teacher standards when you're training, that was with a lot of support. So it's acknowledging that we don't just leave you in the deep end when you qualify and you become an ECT. There is still a programme of support there, which is what is referenced there on the right-hand side. And then the second element is you demonstrating your performance against the teacher standards by the end of induction. So whilst there is that one side of the coin that you're getting that support, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, there's also the other side that you are being assessed against the teacher standards. And at the end of induction, there is a final assessment which will state whether or not you are meeting the teacher standards. You are entitled to support along the way, feedback, being kept up to date with how you're doing, so that by the end of the 2 years, you're successfully and confidently meeting those teacher standards. That middle document there is essentially the most visited web page on my browser. This is because this is the statutory guidance for induction. As an appropriate body, we cannot just make up what we think is best, what we personally think ECTs are entitled to. We, as an appropriate body, are applying the statutory guidance as outlined in this document, which you can find online, but we also have a summary of the key information as well in our handbook, which is ready to publish. I'm waiting on one piece of information, but it will be available for you to access. And we will share with you in September, actually, via a welcome email that we are going to send to you in September. That is our plan. So we just had a little question there. Can we send a link to that document? So I can do that because it is so quick. It's such a quick, often searched page for me. I can do that very quickly for you. Here you go. So I've just sent a link to the document there for you, and the handbook that you will get in September will also give you a good snapshot of the information for you. But that is essentially our Bible. If I ever have any query, I will go back to that. Sylvia and I were in a meeting just yesterday. We had a query from the ECT. We went and we checked, what does the guidance say? So, just going to let our person in. I talked about entitlements, and so it's really important that you as an ECT are aware of entitlements and that your mentor knows as well. So I've alluded to the period of 2 years. So induction lasts for the vast majority of ECTs 6 terms, which typically is 2 years. In year 1, you would do terms 1 to 3. And then in year 2, you do terms 4 to 6. Now, the reason for this change, and also this is maybe information for mentors as well, and mentors will know this fact, is that prior to September 2021, induction was only 1 year. And also, the support that an ECT received, they would have a mentor meeting, but other than that, there was no requirement for them to have any other support other than a mentor meeting. So the early career teacher entitlement that is now in place now, the reason for the 2-year induction period was based on research that the Department for Education conducted with teachers who had left the profession within 5 years of qualifying. And the common response was because of a lack of support beyond their NQT year. They might have had a bit of additional support in their NQT year. That support varied in quality, but then into year 2, that was it. So the rationale for the 2nd year is acknowledging there is still a need for support in year 2. It's not as intensive as it is in year 1, but it is still there and it's still available for you. And the research that was published by the DFE in the last month demonstrates that the early career teacher entitlement is having a positive impact on teacher retention and supporting you as ECTs to feel confident and happy and well supported in your career. And we know many of you are entering this career really excited, fulfilling maybe a long-term dream as well, having worked incredibly hard. And so we want to make sure that you are adequately supported in year 1 and year 2. The other thing here is a structured programme of development, support and professional dialogue underpinned by the early career framework. So you will be embarking on in September a programme that is the early career teacher programme, essentially. And if you are a new mentor as well, and your school is using a lead provider route, so your new mentor is following, let's say, provision by UCL or the National Institute of Teaching, then you as a mentor will also have access to a year of training if you are a brand new mentor who hasn't completed any early career training before. The training that you'll do, ECTs, is going to be a combination of self-study, it will be live sessions, and then also your mentor meetings. So as well as your mentor meetings be a good opportunity to touch base, talk about that week, talk about that maybe that one child that you haven't quite solved yet, or maybe that class that's driving a little bit round, bit doolally. As well as talking about that, they'll also talk to you about your self-study and talk to you about that program, because they're delivering the Early Career Framework program through their mentor meetings as well. So that is essentially your Early Career Framework program. Now, the mentor, who we're lucky enough to be joined by quite a few today, will have identified someone who've got the skills and the knowledge to provide you with subject or phase specific support. So they don't have to be a subject specialist necessarily. It might be that actually they've got that skill to support you outside of their subject, but someone who's got that skills and experience to be able to support you. In year one, your meetings will be weekly. In year two, your meetings will be fortnightly. And your so that's how the mentor meetings work. And then moving on to timetable reduction, which is an often asked question. And you are entitled to a 10% reduction in year one and a 5% reduction in year two. The statutory guidance does not say you have to have X amount of hours off your timetable. It doesn't say about hours or minutes. It talks about percentage. So I'm not able to say to you, you should have 2 hours off a week, is it, if you're year one, and 1 hour off a week in year two. What I can say to you is it's a percentage. So let me give you an example. If you take a classroom teacher that has no other responsibilities and is a classroom teacher, I'm not going to use the word just a classroom teacher because they're still super, super important. But if you are a classroom teacher with no other responsibilities, let's say that you are teaching 20 hours a week. Okay, so you're teaching 20 hours a week, that's the contact time that you've got. The maths teachers among us right now will be able to tell us very quickly that an ECT 1 should have 18 hours a week, because 10% of 20 hours is 18, and then 5% of 20 is 19 hours. Okay, so you take that percentage after the PPA, because the teachers, you've already got the PPA, and then you have a reduction afterwards. When I talk about PPA, that's planning, preparation, and assessment time, and that's time that your school already gives you and all teachers are entitled to. It's a minimum of 10%. Then you as an ECT get an extra 10% in year one and an extra 5% in year two. As you can see, it kind of decreases a little bit in year two to prepare you for that 0% reduction you get in year three, but it's still there in year two. Please drop any questions into the chat if you want me to go back over that. Regular observations. So you are entitled to observations at regular intervals. They should be, you should have a meeting about that observation and you should have written feedback. These should not be surprise observations. We would ask the person observing you to inform you in advance. It's good practice to do so. And so you know when they're going to be coming in. So we recommend they take place once a half term to give them enough opportunity to observe you, to give you feedback. And the reason why it needs to be a regular interval is to give you sufficient time to then take on board that feedback and implement it into your teaching. And the other idea as well is they're assessing you and making sure that you are on track to meet the teacher's standards, because if you're not judged to be on track to meet the teacher's standards by the end of induction, we expect the school to help you and put in extra support to help you get there. And so what we don't want to do is for you to go all year, not have any observations, and then school to turn around and say to you, oh, we think there's a bit of an issue, because that's not fair on you. So as an ECT, that's why we expect them to happen once a half term. And then there's different ways of reporting, but you're entitled to these reports. So you should have one report a term. I'll come to that question, Jess, in just a minute. So you should have one report a term. I'll talk about what those reports will look like in just a minute, whether or not it will be a professional progress review, or I'll use the acronym because we're in education, PPR, or it might be an assessment. Okay, and I'll talk to you about kits as well and when they take place. But the whole point of that is you should be getting feedback on your progress. You should be being told, this is going really well in your teaching. Let's celebrate these moments, particularly when you're an ECT. And let's say you get to February, March, it's a long winter. You get into the end, you might be feeling a little bit disillusioned at times. It's worth focusing on the positives. So we always ask those reports each term to focus on your positives, and then we'll also share areas for development. So for the PPRs, you'll have 2 areas for development, and it's just something for you to focus on what your next steps are. So a question here from Jess, will observations be weekly? You will have a half-termly formal observation. If you are at a school that's using the National Institute of Teaching's ECT programme, then you will also have an informal drop-in from your mentor for 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not here to talk at length about the Early Career Teacher programme because that's not my area of expertise and I don't manage that. But I do know for those schools that use the National Institute of Teaching's ECT programme, you also have a 10-15 minute drop-in from your mentor. And the point of that is they can come in and they can say, oh, that's brilliant. You did that really well. You did that really well. I noticed this. What about if you tried doing it differently and you did it this way? And then you do a little bit of deliberate practice with your mentor. If you do use the lead provider, the National Institute of Teaching, you'll get more information about what exactly that looks like in September because there is training happening in September for you. I'm at pains to add that might not be the case for all ECTs and mentors joining us today because I know not all of you are using the National Institute of Teaching as your early career teacher programme. So stakeholders in induction, we've got some very important people here. We have you as an ECT supported by your mentor, and then you have your induction tutor. I'll talk to them about what they do in a minute. And then finally, your head teacher as well. So these are the 4 main stakeholders in induction. And then your head teacher has got some roles, but you will probably interact with them less frequently in terms of your induction, but they have some very important behind the scene roles that the statutory guidance has outlined. So you don't necessarily need to worry too much about these things, apart from maybe number 4, which is ultimately it's the head teacher who makes the recommendation to us about whether or not you have satisfactorily demonstrated that you are meeting the teacher standards. They'll be doing kind of pre-employment checks, making sure that you have got QTS. They'll be appointing your induction tutor, agreeing the mentor, and then they will also make sure that your progress is happening and you're having these reports that are being happening. So if, for example, reports aren't completed, we will reach out to the induction tutor, but we'll also notify the head teacher because the head teacher should be aware of that. The induction tutor is the person essentially who's leading the early career teacher entitlement at your school. This is quite often a senior leader and their responsibilities are laid out here. So they've got to make sure that you are having those formal observations that I've talked about. They need to make sure that they're writing reviews against your progress. So it is your induction tutor who is responsible for your assessing your progress against the teacher standards. That's not the role of the mentor. I'll talk to you a little bit more about the supportive role of the mentor in a minute. But ultimately, it's the induction tutor who wears that assessing hat, and it's the mentor who wears that supportive, more frequent contact hat, which is why it's the induction tutor who would be meeting you as an ECT on a termly basis to talk about your progress. It might be your induction tutor or another suitable member of staff who is observing you on that half-termly observation. As you can see here, and I've shared this with induction tutors just last week, they have to support you. So if they figure out that you're having a bit of a wobble, that you need some extra support, you should not be left alone. There should be some extra support for you that the induction tutor would coordinate. They liaise a lot with us. We contact induction tutors often. They contact us. They let us know if things have changed, if you've gone on maternity leave, if you're maybe unfortunately suffering a long-term absence, they keep us in the loop. And so we take a lot of contact with the induction tutor. And they also will be probably talking to you about your early career teacher program, what's going on. You've got some training coming up. They might be looking at how much self-study you've done. They are there to coordinate, provide guidance for you in terms of your professional development. So the mentor. The mentor is the person who you will interact the most out of those 3 other stakeholders that I've talked to you about. So the induction tutor is the formal assessment role, and the mentor is more support and advising the ECT through induction. And I just want to say thank you so much to the mentors who have made the time to join today, because I can already sense that you obviously are really committed to supporting your mentors, your mentees, because you're wanting to develop a really firm understanding of your ECT's experience. So it is the mentor's role to meet with their ECT weekly or fortnightly. That meeting, where possible, should be timetabled. Should be timetabled during the school day. It's not always possible, unfortunately. But where possible, the timetabler should be seeking to do that. If it's not possible, it must take place when directed time. You shouldn't be doing it outside of directed time. But you might want to speak to the induction tutor and just find out when is that mentor meeting going to be, particularly if you're in a secondary school, timetables being confirmed. Are there any tweaks that could be made this side of summer rather than afterwards? And again, that's not my opinion. That is the statutory guidance. The meeting should be timetabled where possible. Failing that, it must take place in directed time. And that's just to support the mentor, essentially, to make sure that you are given that time to do the role. And you are there to provide that support. As a mentor, you're really crucial, because you are 9 times out of 10 are going to be a phase or year or subject specialist. You're going to be able to really contextualize for an ECT, maybe some self-study they've been doing, and you've been able to talk about, so what does that look like for us in reception? What's that look like for us in year 12 geography? Because you're working with ECTs, I'm looking at ECTs right now, working across a set of different contexts, and the best person to know that and advise in that context is you as a mentor. And also you're able to tailor their self-study, what they've been learning about, to their own development phase as well. So you're really crucial in helping them in their development and coaching them. You can support them through the assessment process, but again, it's not your role as a mentor to assess them and make that judgment. That is the induction tutor's role. They might ask for your input. I'm not going to be, I think if I was an induction tutor and I was writing a report, I might speak to the mentor and say, is there anything that I can put in here that you want me to be aware of? But ultimately, it's the induction tutor who is responsible for submitting that report. Is there any questions on roles and responsibilities before I move on?
Yeah, can I ask, how important is it that we log the mentor meeting onto the actual website? Because sometimes I'm having great difficulty in actually getting onto it. Sometimes I find it works no problem. Sometimes I put on schedule a meeting and we're sitting there meeting for, we usually meet for an hour and we're trying to figure out how to work the website and we cannot get it working. And I don't think it's any fault of you guys or anything like that. There just sometimes it doesn't work.
Sure, Garrett. What school are you at, Garrett?
King John School.
Lovely. Okay, so you've got Tilly over there, haven't you?
I've got Tilly, yes, lovely.
So news fresh off the press, Garrett, is there is a new platform coming our way in September.
Yeah.
So it's called Prism.
Yeah.
And I will, as you say, it's not to do with us as the appropriate body. It's the early career teacher program side of things. Yeah. But where possible, I'd recommend you use Prism, particularly as I've been told that it's now pre-populated with suggested actions for the ECT, like what would be their recommended next step, pre-populated with the gender items. There's some videos on how to use it, and there'll be a bit of training on it in September, I understand.
Yeah.
But if you're really struggling, Garrett, and it's really being problematic, I don't want you to spend hours trying to resolve it. And so what we do have is we've got a template, and this goes for everyone. we thoroughly advise you to record your mentor meetings because it's good practice to record mentor meetings and meetings in education in general. I'm not talking about war and peace. I'm not talking about minuting in terms of every single thing you talk about, but potentially the key things. So Garrett, if you're having issues with PRISM still in September, on ECT Manager, we have got a template, a mentor meeting template, which I've run past the early career teacher program team. I said, is this the right structure? And they've confirmed it is.
Yeah.
You can't access the template right now, Garrett.
Yeah.
But you can, first of all, you can ask Tilly, but if you wait around at the end, or maybe Sylvia, if she's able to work her magic, and again, I'm putting her on the spot, Sylvia, on ECT Manager right now, there is a template for the NIOP mentor meeting. If you're able to download that and pop that into chat for Garrett now, that'd be really helpful. But if you can't, I'll do that at the end for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Lovely. So just another question here, a really good question here. Varian, are you an ECT, Varian? I'm going to proceed and expect you are an ECT, Varian. So Varian's asked, I have a TLR and have 2 hours. It's Joe. Sorry, Joe. Lovely, got you. So Joe has got a TLR and 2 hours off timetable per fortnight for this. So Joe, let's look at, you should have essentially 3 reductions on your timetable. You should have your PPA reduction. All teachers get a PPA reduction. All teachers get the same PPA reduction at your school. It might differ slightly from school to school, but the minimum you should get as PPA is 10%. So that should be there. You should then get a reduction for your TLR. If your TLR comes the reduction, you should have that. And then you've got that reduction. And then finally, you've got a reduction for your ECT time. So you've got the 3 reductions there. You might want to speak to your school and just confirm that you should get a reduction for that TLR. They might say to you, oh no, we're not going to give you a reduction because I'm not at that school. I can't talk to you to talk to that. But typically you would get a reduction for a TLR, but you should have the 3 different elements there. I hope that helps, Joe. Okay. Talked about the role of the mentor. I thought just a little quick glance at the lesson observation form for you. This is the form that we have available for all of our schools to use. And the whole point of it is an opportunity to capture evidence of you demonstrating as an ECT using the teacher standards. There is then a space at the end. We would like to see that schools are celebrating your strengths. And then also which is on the right hand side here, I'm just going to wave my cursor. It's about here. And then you've got agreed smart actions. We want them to be smart actions. We don't want you to have vague targets such as improve student independence, improve use of AFL, use more AFL. We want you to be guided on how to do that specifically, make it measurable, achievable, relevant, and ideally time-bound for you. So we have got a guide on our ECT Manager for people who are using, making smart targets. And then just a note on PPRs, I talked about these earlier on. These take place in terms 1, 2, 4, and 5. So you have 2 PPRs in year 1 and 2 PPRs in year 2. And then you have an assessment, 1 in term 3 and 1 in term 6. That is the kind of schedule of reporting, okay? That is for that's for a full-time ECT. So if you're working part-time, it'll be slightly different. It works out as pro rata. So can anyone in the chat just say if they're part-time, so I know if I need to go into that detail for you. Okay, so I'm not going into the detail about part-time because I don't have anyone in the chat right now. So we need lots of detail, but essentially it's worked out pro rata. So if you're working 0.5, it would take you 2 years to complete year 1 because it would take you double the time because you're doing at half the speed of a full-time ECT. So that's how it works. But you would still have, even if you're part-time, you'd still have a report every term, but it would be a PPR until you get to the end of the equivalent of year 1, which would be at the end of year 2, end of the second year if you were 0.5. You would meet with your induction tutor to discuss these, and they are submitted on a platform called ECT Manager. So ECT Manager is the platform that we use as the appropriate body, and I will show you very quickly what that looks like. So this is how you search for it, and this is more relevant to ECTs. This is not because we want to exclude you mentors, but it's because as a mentor does not have a role in the assessing process, that's why mentors don't have a login to ECT Manager. You'll be your head teacher, the ECT, and the induction tutor. So you would search for ECT Manager, and you could go to the top, it will say click here to log into ECT Manager. You can search for us. We're Harris Teaching School Hub, and this is the website as well. And that way you can find us nice and easy. But quite often, if I'm feeling lazy, folks, I'll be honest, I just Google Harris ECT Manager. It takes me straight there as well. So if you Google that, don't worry about the exact web page. It will take you there. Then each ECT has a profile. So when you log in, you will see your overview. And this is an example of an ECT that I have blanked out for you. You can see that they started induction on the 1st of September 2023. And you've got all the reports here. So these were the reports, and you can see P for progress review, P, A in term 3, P, and then F for final assessment in term 6. And you can see here that as an ECT, as well as your induction tutor submitting it onto ECT Manager, you having an opportunity to discuss it with your induction tutor, you will then also have an opportunity to comment on it before it is submitted to us. We really value your voice as an AB, which is why we always give you an opportunity to comment. You'll have seen that on the lesson observation form as well. So you will get that account in September. So you have got those details on how to access it. If you don't get the details, go to your induction tutor. They can reset your password. They can press resend password to you so you can log in. You don't need to create anything. Your induction tutor's taking care of that. They've registered a whole huge number of you on ECT Manager. We're authorising you this week, so you're ready to start in September. We authorise you, then we tell the DFE that you have been claimed. And you've got a documents area. So here we go. Here's your documents area. As I say, it's on this left-hand side, you can see here. And this is where we also ask your school to upload your observations. So your reports are completed directly onto the platform, but this is a space to upload documents. We ask your school to upload 1 observation per term, and an observation takes place every half term. If you want to keep all your observations up there, that's absolutely fine, but at least you have those observations, at least one per term is uploaded. Just some frequently asked questions. So very quickly, I'll whip through these. Who do I contact if I've got concerns? So I have talked a little bit about this. In the first instance, always talk to your induction tutor. If you're not getting anywhere, maybe have a quick chat with your head teacher. If there's still issues as an ECT, contact us. We've got Mark's email address there. Sylvia dropped it into the chat earlier on, and you've also got my address as well. So if you've exhausted all those means, then please do get in contact with us. Then we have our absence. So I just want to make it really clear in terms of absence. You can have up to 30 days absence in 1 year of induction. So let's say up to 30, yeah, up to 30. So let's say you have 29.75 days of absence in year 1 of induction. Then that's fine. I say that's fine. It's obviously not what you would want, but sometimes it's unavoidable. There is ill health. If you reach 30 days of absence or more, that year of induction is extended. It's extended by the total aggregate number of absences in that year of absence, of induction. So let's say, for argument's sake, there was unavoidably, you had 35 days of absence in year 1. At the end of term 3, your school's not allowed to complete end of year 1 assessment. They have to complete a PPR. And then you have another 35 days worth of an extension, which works out at about 7 weeks to year 1. Point of that extension is to actually make sure that you have the same opportunity as other ECTs that weren't unfortunately affected by that long-term absence, because they're acknowledging that you are probably at a disadvantage compared to an ECT who's not had that length of absence. So that's just to be really clear, 30 days is that trigger point in year 1 and year 2 for an extension. The exception to that for absences is a statutory leave. So maternity leave, paternity leave, shared parental leave, the ones I can see here, parental bereavement leave. That's, by the way, if you as a parent are bereaved, not if you lose your own parent. So that's if you are a parent and you unfortunately suffer the loss of a child. So all of these leaves are what are called statutory leaves. If any of these leaves take place, when you return from this leave, you are entitled to extend your induction by the total period of which you've been absent. So let's say you go on mat leave, and that's the one that we deal with vast majority of the time. Let's say you're on mat leave for 3 terms. When you come back, you're entitled to say, I want to extend it for those 3 terms. Or you're entitled to say, no, I'm happy not to extend it. I just want to finish the 6 terms and we can finish it. So there is an opportunity to extend if you do a statutory leave, whereas it's compulsory if you have 30 or more days of what's called ad hoc absence. And any questions about absences, feel free to put them in the chat, because I know it's a bit of a topic that people have questions about. An important one here about, can I fail induction? I have to be really clear, yes, you can. So I've talked about assessment, I've talked about support mechanisms, I've talked about school putting in additional support for you, but ultimately at the end of term 6, you are assessed against the teacher standards. If the assessment is at the end of your induction period that you are not meeting the teacher standards, then it will be reported to the TRA that you have not successfully passed induction. And so that is, and you cannot resit induction. You would not lose your QTS, you keep your QTS, but you would be on a list that the TRA hold of ECTs that have not passed induction. I will say very confidently and very happily that no of the ECTs that I've worked with have not passed induction, but it's very important that I'm very clear with you that that is a possibility. You can't resit induction, okay? And then you can move schools. So let's say you're starting at a new school next year, everything's going really wonderfully for you, but you need to relocate geographically. And so you're going to move to a new school for your 2nd year of induction. That is possible. It can happen. So you don't have to remain at one school for your entire 6 terms of induction. You can do 3 terms at one school and 3 terms at the other, okay? Or 2 terms at one school, 2 terms at another, and 2 terms at another, if it so happens, okay? The period of time that you've done at your previous school will be banked, all right? We report to the TRA, you've done 2 terms with us, and so that your new school, when they pick you up, they know how much you've done historically. We pass on all your reports to your new school, so they have got that as a record too. But you have to do a minimum of a term for it to count. So you can't do 6 weeks at a school and then move on. You have to do the minimum of a term for that period to count, because a school cannot assess you until that's done. I don't think I have any ECTs who are here part-time, so we have talked about that, covered what I needed to. And then just to let you know, you can do induction as a supply teacher, provided that you have been registered for induction before your induction period is supposed to start, and you have all your entitlements, and you do the minimum of a term. So what I'm going to do is just take some questions, but before I do, I'm going to leave this image on the board. You can tell I'm a teacher, folks. I mean the screen. You can see here the calendar for the academic year. We've got here the lesson observations, which we suggest. We've got a schedule for when we suggest lesson observations take place. And then we also have the ones that are asterisks are the ones that we say must be uploaded to ECT Manager. Sorry, the ones without do not need to be uploaded, but the ones with should be uploaded. And you can see they're scheduled, so they take place at regular intervals. And you've also got the dates for the PPRs, PPR1, PPR2, formal assessment, PPR3, PPR4, and then formal assessment in year 2. So what I'll do now is I will stop the recording and I will answer any questions in the chat, and I will take questions. So bear with me for a second.
We have a few questions coming up.
Lovely. Yeah, I've got some. Thank you. Just trying to find that button. Right.